Hello and welcome everyone to the latest episode of the Reverse Sweep Show. This is your host SS, and joining me as ever is my co-host AB. A lot of IPL action these days. It's tough to retain what we have watched, but some blistering knocks, some great spells, some good matches as well recently. AB, what has stood out for you while watching IPL?
Yes, so much of cricketing action of late, it's becoming a bit of a blur for me. But then in that blur, there are definitely some of those moments which stand out. For me, I think the watching Bumrah being smashed for two sixes by Vaibhav Suryavanshi, that was insane to watch. I mean, it's just like the best bowler in the world comes in full steam and you are so nonchalant about it. You just flick him for a six, you just hit him for a six. That and again followed up yesterday by another blistering knock of what 70 out of some 20 odd balls. I
Crazy.
mean that is catching my eye for sure. How about you, SS? What have you been following? What action is catching your eye? And also more importantly, what's the topic for today?
So whatever little PSL highlights I was catching, I've stopped catching on those because I have to catch up on IPL highlights after watching IPL. The
Hmm.
county cricket season also started, and all the news around Jimmy Anderson still going strong, picking up fifers. Really good to see that. Pure love of the game there. But yeah, LSG hasn't been performing that badly. I don't think they will now get wooden spoon.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, they found a gem in Mukul Chaudhary who won the last game versus KKR. Uh, yeah, Abhishek also doing brilliantly today as well for SRH. Yeah, RR looking really strong. My underperforming so far, but I'm pretty sure they will catch in. Later on, RCB looking good as well. They're batting till number 9 with Venki Iyer coming. Looking like yesterday they wouldn't even make 150. They ended up making more than 200. So a lot of great action. And we thought to keep IPL. I mean, that's the flavor of the season and content around it. In the previous episode, the long form which we did was a hypothetical draft battle between us trying to create the best overseas 11. Today, we are looking at the entire spectrum of what has happened in the IPL through the years and what have been the biggest inflection points which have had the max consequences. The game changed, the way people thought about IPL and T20 changed. So we are going to take three stabs at it, three stories from us, the biggest inflection points. And for the first story, I will pass it to you, AB. What have you got for our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I mean, IPL is now almost 19 years old, and so many inflection points that we have observed over the years. For the first inflection point, I go back right to the start of the IPL. Although inflection point typically is when you have something going on for some time, and then an event occurs which completely changes the trajectory. I think we don't have history of IPL before that. That is the very first match of IPL that we are talking about.
The Big
Brendan
Bang.
McCullum's Big Bang of IPL. And I call that as an inflection point because it changed IPL forever compared to what it could have been. 158, remember, and smacking bowlers everywhere. And that is one innings which showed the world, showed Indian audiences and across the world what T20 cricket could look like. Not today, not tomorrow, but maybe even over the course of the next 15, 20 years. Even when we see Abhishek Sharma, Travis Head, bat today, Suryavanshi bat today, they are trying to match up with what Brendan McCullum did on that night. And to do that on the very first night of a tournament like IPL, which had a lot of promise coming in, India winning the T20 World Cup, a lot of audiences, people being excited about what the tournament has to offer, and then Brendan McCullum just painting that picture of what T20 cricket could be like. I think that was the very first inflection point that I can think of for IPL, and rightfully so.
Yeah. And it also showed what the future of RCB would hold because I think RCB was the opposition that day and it took them so many years to come out of it. That all these mega stars that they had, the traditional stars, Anil Kumble, Rahul Dravid, and some foreign players as well, and they were all shocked on what was happening that night. And it is still the benchmark. I mean, if Travis Shaik comes out today, they are still trying to beat that. Gale was trying to match that. So Brendan McCullum did all whatever he has done for English cricket, baseball, and all that. But that one night and the first night to do all that, I think that just gave whatever momentum, the momentum that has always been positive since that day. So yeah, I mean, great call out. I mean, that's an inflection point. That's a story that was a cataclysm that has been IPL. So for my first story, I'm going to take a stab on the opposite end of what McCullum did into fast bowling. I mean, line and length used to rule the roost. We were living in the Glenn McGrath era of 2000s where our thing was okay, either you're a Glenn McGrath or you are a bowler like Shoaib Akhtar or Brett Lee, who has got
Or
tremendous
Wasim
amount of
Akram, who
pace,
could just
or
swing it.
Wasim Akram. Yeah, you have got a lot of skills. And that was it. How will we see that in T20 was the big one, and how will we see that in IPL? And it has gone through a lot of evolution over the years. But what we have realized over time was when, for me, the standout was Malinga, who came in. And for me, that is the inflection that you cannot be one dimensional. Of course, you cannot be somebody who could be read, especially with the data analytics revolution that was coming to go through. That you can't just rely on pace. You just can't rely on slower deliveries. Yes, slower deliveries have become like the paramount way that players and know what it is coming and they prepare for it. But you had like a lot of one-dimensional guys like Rusty Theron, Isuru Dana, if even Irfan Pathan, who used to bowl a lot of slower deliveries after he had lost his swing. But you needed to have some other skill set so that your slower delivery gets the due attention and it has its due effect. And Malinga was about to bring that. He had the slower bouncer, he had the Yorker, then he had the slower Yorker. He would also tempt you outside the off stump as well. So you had all that skill set, and then the upgrade version of Malinga became Bumrah. It's just MI things, right? And then Bumrah is like the people will sing that he is the most archetype modern T20 bowler that anyone can aspire to be. Of course, through that you had a Dwayne Bravo as well, who did not have that much pace, but on his good day could hit 140. You had an Andre Russell being able to do, but variety was the king, and variety not just in pace but also in length and what you can bowl with different angles. Malinga for me was the standout. I'm still surprised we don't have a statue of Malinga outside the Wankhede Stadium. Maybe they will make a together statue with Bumrah someday. But pace bowling, the variety, um, everything around it. It had become like a complete skill in itself. So you have pace bowling in Test cricket centered around line length, swing and seam, which are really important today as well. A Deepak Chahar, a Sandeep Sharma, and Bhuvneshwar Kumar can still do well, but they have to have multiple skills in that toolkit, which could be swing, it could be slow deliveries, it could be bouncers, but you need to have that variety. But Malinga was the first one to bring that out, and that stands out for me as how pace bowling has evolved in IPL.
Yeah, and what is interesting about that point is that you always see the evolution in batting and bowling coming together. It's almost like a game of chess that the batters and bowlers are playing against each other. Earlier, you could do with just pitching the ball in the same area through the overs, six balls in the same area.
Yeah.
But with
And batters would respect that. Now batters won't respect that
batters will not respect that
because
at all.
it's all in the pattern recognition. They will realize very quickly what patterns are you following, and you could be thrashed.
Absolutely, and that is where Malinga was such a pioneer in changing how bowlers were looking at the game, developing their skill sets, slow balls coming in. He completely aced the end overs game with his Yorkers, which a lot of bowlers still try to emulate. But I guess it's only bowlers like Bumrah who
Yeah,
get it
and
right.
bowling Yorkers in the power play. I still remember the CSK MI IPL finals. I think the first one MI won, and he got that Yorker going to Mike Hussey in the first or the second over, and it was clean bowled. Nobody expects Yorkers to be bowled in the first second over, so he did that.
Absolutely, and what that did was it forced batters to also evolve and adapt. And
Yeah.
that is where my third inflection point comes in. We are talking about the era of mid 2010s. There are a lot of global superstars coming in and playing in the IPL, and we see two different schools of thoughts splitting and diverging when it comes to batting. On the one hand, you have the entire ABD playbook of 360 batting. On the other hand, you have the Caribbean brute force ABD, and then later on with Sky, batters started to exploit and manipulate the park 360 degrees. When you could have bowlers like Malinga bowling Yorkers, the batters would just scoop the ball behind. And then we also have the reverse scoop now, but that's a further evolution. And then you have players like Andre Russell, Kyron Pollard, Chris Gale, who could just smack the ball out of the park
Tim David
whenever they
now, the
want.
latest one in
Tim
that.
David, absolutely. And you just bowl in their arc and the ball disappears. So you have batting evolving. So on the one hand, batters have to practice all these wacky shots across the
Yeah,
park, and then they practice the range hitting. So I think that
yeah.
is another inflection point that we saw towards the mid 2010s with all these players coming in into the fray.
And I think now in the cricketing circles, there's a clear demarcation into batting and hitting. So I think what you spoke about is the hitting part of it. And now, so you don't have scope of more than one anchor. If you have more than one anchor, you are playing way behind than cricket is going. And India discovered, the international team discovered that over 5, 6 years. And Rohit had to evolve. Kohli had to evolve.
Kohli had to evolve.
And so then you had to be like really elite. If you're not hitting, then as a batter, you still need to play shots, take advantage of power play, take advantage of pace. That has led to some of these players being suboptimal against spin because they're not able to hit with brute power or they don't have the 360 game to do that. But then your role became quite constrained and quite straightforward in a way as well, because now Rohit and Virat know what they need to do. Of course, you will talk about one more story probably about impacts of what how that has impacted their batting as well. But you have the hitting school, which is now expanding. You have got a Mukul Chaudhary coming in. You have Vaibhav Suryavanshi playing. And they are going into like the brute force way. Heinrich Klaassen. But the 361 is still special. I mean, you still have some players playing around that. Tom Banton and Liam Livingston also do that a bit around it. And then you have a Tim Seifert. So it's happening all around the world. We've seen it in the World Cup as well. But the IPL is probably where it all got like germinated. This is where the big experiments in hitting were happening. So yeah, a lot about it. But then that's what happens. We go from one story to another. The other story is okay. Fast bowlers. It's no. How many teams can afford a Bumrah? How many teams can afford a Bhuvneshwar Kumar? It takes time to develop all these skills. So now on the other side, you have spinners. I remember the conversation when the IPL and T20 began like climbing up that there's no future of spinners. They will be like hit everyone. Andrew Simons murders them or Virender Sehwag murders them, but those are just one in a team. Now think about seven batters and seven hitters in your team. They will all murder spin. Ashwin was probably the last one with his classical off spin, but he also had a carom ball. So the mystery element started coming in. You had an Ajanta Mendes that started doing well. But then Sunil Narayan was the one that was trying to bring in some mystery elements and on. But he had his struggle with the actions. There's so many right-handers that when the matchup started being built a lot, off spinners were taken out of the picture. I mean, there are very few off spinners, which unless and until you are a Narayan or like a supremely good off spinner, and you need to have variety to succeed. So the rarer skins became like the ones that everyone started looking after and looking for. So you had the leg spinners, which are a rarer commodity. Then you have even rarer, which are the Chinaman bowlers. Everyone started looking at them. Yuzi Chahal, a Kuldeep Yadav. But then you also have people like Adil Rashid who probably did not succeed. And then the next set of evolution was okay. I need to bring fast spin, and Akshar Patel can do well. Ravin Jadeja can do well. They can be economical if they are not picking up wickets. Just because you make it harder for the batter to take quick decisions, the ball will spin and you don't have that much time to come down the track. And then you also add some variety. I mean, like a Rashid Khan, if you can have the dip, the turn, the grip with the speed, then it becomes much more difficult for the batters, especially on grounds which are not Chinnaswamy. You need to be a Yuzi Chahal to succeed at Chinnaswamy. But variety in spin, but more coming from bowlers you don't face that much often. That those are leg spinners and the wristies that have become like an inflection point now. Every IPL franchise, whether they are going into an auction, even if they have a leg spinner in their roster, they still look for more and more and more. And that's a question like for MI, for example. They're like one of the things that people are pointing out is that they don't have a ace leg spinner, even though they have a Markande for a long period of time. So everyone now looks to fill the leg spinner spot, and it's a hard skill to get good at, but everyone wants it because they know that there's no hiding for spinners otherwise.
It's a hard skill, and what is harder is that with players like Rashid Khan coming in, you have to be accurate at a faster pace, or you
Yeah.
have to have that mystery element and ensure that batters are not able to find you in the age of all these video analytics.
And
And
also
people like
reverse sweep.
Sunil
I mean, they
Narayan.
will they will manipulate the field, so you can't have only one ball turning one way. You would be just exploited.
And what I love about that point, and for all the viewers and listeners to also be able to appreciate the kind of impact that this has had, as is that it's percolated across formats. We
Yeah.
see that even in Test cricket, the spinners have gotten faster, and because of that, Indian batters are no longer good players of spin because earlier they could just step down the pitch and play spin, but now they have to work on sweeping the spinners because the spinners have gotten faster. So it's been percolated across formats, and definitely in case of IPL, it was such an inflection point.
And look at the other side as well. A spinner like Simon Harmer is not getting an IPL or a PSL contract. He's a very still a very traditional. Nathan Lyon, even an Adam Zampa. I mean, he had his There, of course, that's an element of how many foreigners you can play for an IPL team. But the more classical you are, and you are so good in your 1-2 skills, think of a James Anderson in a spin version. It's harder for you to get picked for an IPL team because in IPL and in T20 world, the variety that you have, a Varun Chakravarti will be, or Sunil Narayan if you are an off spinner, if you're a leg spinner, or a wristy, your chances of getting picked and getting sustained are much, much higher.
Obviously. And with this constant back and forth battle between batting and bowling, uh, players evolving, their skill sets changing, IPL just decided in 2023 that let's just let loose the pigeons amongst the cats and change the rules. And they introduced something called an impact sub rule. Initially, we all thought it would be something like a super sub back in the day. Uh, I mean, we all thought that probably it will increase what all rounders would bring to the table, but we saw the results, right? Before the impact sub rule, in all the 15, 16 years of IPL history, the teams crossed the score of 200, 130 times. And since the impact sub rule, that has already happened 130 times. So we see what impact sub has done is just skyrocket the average scores that teams are scoring. And the reason for that is because they have a proper batter coming in at number 8. So batters up top, even batters like Virat Kohli, when they're opening the innings, they have such a lot of buffer and safety net when it comes to batting in the lineup that they can go and bang bang from from the start of the innings. And that is one point, but that coincided with the Travis Shaik era in SRH in 2024. And what that meant was batters going hard from the first ball, power play scores crossing hundreds. And we have seen what SRH has been doing, 250 plus scores becoming a norm now. So I think that's another inflection point when we talk about IPL. And that is something which has again percolated to T20I cricket. We saw 250 scores in this particular World Cup
Yeah.
edition, and England getting so close to India's score in that semi-final as well. So overall, impacts up plus Travis Shaik era, getting average scores when teams are.
Absolutely. It has absolutely turbocharged. Even yesterday when RCB were really struggling. They could get a Venkatesh Iyer at number 9 and they got 200 and they were any other era the team would have struggled to make 150. So there's a
150.
full license to kill and license to thrill. We made an explainer video of it as well. We'll link it in the show notes as well on the impact of the impact sub. But yeah, huge inflection point and it is still on. Our last point is also something that is still in the mist is about the global footprint of IPL in general. They started doing the Champions League T20 in the very early seasons. In fact, ran for 4 5 seasons, didn't get so much traction, lost a bit of an interest. So IPL and the administrators thought, well, IPL itself is a Champions League with all the best players anyways playing, and we have the ownership model. We have the brand, which is now universal as well. Why don't we take the same brand and the same concept everywhere around the world? SAT20 being the biggest benefactor in a way, but the franchises are present everywhere. Even BBL is now opening up for foreign ownership, so probably a BBL franchises will also have an IPL flavor to it. But this is just the game becoming more and more franchised, and we don't know what the future of cricket in terms of national cricket versus franchise cricket will hold like. But IPL is already showing the doors on how it could be. More and more windows. IPL franchises becoming like the whole host, so you don't need a Champions League 20. Maybe there will be a inter IPL competition in the years to come, where Texas Super Kings will play the Chennai Super Kings and everywhere
Uh,
around. So it is going on and on and on. We still don't know in which direction it can go, and what impact will we it will have on the game. But surely the inflection point was all these IPL teams having foreign ownership in leagues outside. So it will keep growing. So that's another point which I feel is a big inflection in the IPL history.
Yeah, and we're still in the midst of that inflection point.
Yeah,
We don't know how world cricket and Indian cricket will change, and it's very exciting. Honestly, you mentioned about the case in point of South African cricket,
yeah,
SA20, and the resultant benefactor of that being the South African cricket. Major
exactly.
League cricket being another big area. I mean, US as a consumer market is the biggest market, and if cricket can
ILT20
tap
as
into that,
well for the Gulf as well. I mean, that's quite big.
yeah, absolutely. And now even 100 Indian ownership there, Indian franchises.
Exactly, and I think England being strong as a cricketing nation is very important for the world cricket as well. So I think 100 will continue to Now I think the future is secure of 100 because now you have these owners coming in. So the questions on will 100 be there? It surely will be there because these owners would have studied on the model and what's the future of it. So yeah, there you have it. We both did three stories each on the biggest inflection points and how it has impacted IPL and the world cricket in general. Uh, for more such content, keep following us on YouTube and Spotify and wherever you get your podcast from. We also publish some short form content every week. And so we will meet you next week. Keep enjoying IPL till then, guys. Bye bye.